Hey guys, today I'm going to be giving you 3 tips to helping raise your self-awareness. It's going to be really helpful in shifting your mood, shifting your thinking, and becoming a much more conscious thinker, which will then shift your reality. So let's get started. I'm Emily Goldthwait. I'm an author and energy healer, and I help people have powerful self-awareness, deep self-compassion, and expanded understanding. So let's start out by talking a little bit about why become more aware of your thoughts, right? They're just thoughts. They're in your head. They're not doing a whole lot. They're just, sometimes they can be a little annoying, but they're just kind of like there, ever present. So why become more aware of it? Well, our reality is generated not only by our conscious thoughts, but our subconscious thoughts. And the more repetitively that we think of something with our conscious thoughts, the more ingrained it becomes in our subconscious mind. So your thoughts generate your reality. They dictate your vibrational frequency, or as some people might understand it, your mood. You can kind of gauge, if you're not familiar with vibrational frequencies, think of it almost as your mood. Like when you feel really down or you feel really up, you're vibrating at different levels, okay? There's a quote in my favoriteest book ever. It is called... Okay, I actually hate the title of this book. I almost didn't read it because I thought the title was corny. It's an amazing book. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Gaikonde. Look it up. It will change your life. Don't let the flowery picture or the title throw you off from reading this book. It is seriously world expanding, and it's super easy to understand, and you don't even have to read it in order. Anyways, I really like this book. So he has a quote I wanted to share with you today. It says, "Your life is your images expressed into physical things. More accurately, it is the manifestation into the physical world of the visions, good and bad, that you believe in most consciously and unconsciously." Okay? So what we think about and the images that we hold in our mind are what end up manifesting into our reality. So if you think of it that way, like what kind of thoughts go through your head in a day, and is that a reality you want to generate for yourself? So it's super important to become more self-aware so that you can have more say and more participation in your life and how it goes, versus feeling like you're always a victim or just like going with the flow, riding along with whatever the heck comes down the pipe at you. So tip number 1 is observation. Observation of your own thoughts. So this is something you're gonna have to practice because it's not necessarily something we do instinctively, is to practice stopping yourself, whether you use a timer during the day or something, to stop and observe what your thoughts are doing. What am I thinking right now? What's the background noise playing behind the conscious thoughts of whatever task you're doing? What is behind all of that? What's the background noise? What is generating your mood at present? What is like maybe a circular thought that just keeps buzzing around back there that you haven't stopped to acknowledge it's there? Also, pay attention if you notice any triggers. If you notice any sudden shifts in mood, whether for good or for bad, stop and look at, okay, what's the shift? And look at the catalyst. And then you can start to observe, okay, what am I reacting to? And start to question, maybe why you're reacting the way you're reacting to that catalyst, to that stimulus, and observe your thoughts that way. So anything that's like a sudden disrupt to your regular flow or pattern, stop and look at what was the pattern going on before that moment, and also what did it shift to and why. Number 2 is learning to pay attention to body signals. Now this one, it took me actually a couple of years and different veins of thoughts and things that I read to really grasp this concept that the body is a messenger for the soul. So everything is created energetically before it manifests externally. So when you have either an illness or even an injury in your body, it is actually your body trying to tell you something. It's trying to communicate something to you that is out of alignment in yourself or in your soul or in your thinking, okay? And so your body has perfect awareness of itself in time and space. So there is no actual accidents. Like I stub my toes all the time, and I used to be like, what the heck? Why is my pinky toe just hanging out there or something to always catch on every piece of furniture? But when I started learning that my body knows exactly where every part of it is at all times, I started realizing it was signaling me. What were my thoughts doing at that time? What was I feeling at that time? Now, I have some charts that I screenshotted on my phone years ago. I'm going to try and find the website where I got those. I will flash those up here on the screen, and one is for toes and one is for fingers, because those ones are the easiest ones to catch. The bigger physical illnesses, hopefully you can catch those thoughts before they turn into bigger physical illnesses. But fingers and toes, like we're injuring those things all the time, or at least maybe I'm the only one that does that. But I'm always constantly like bumping it or almost injuring it where I'm like, oh my gosh, was that a wound? Okay, no, we're fine. Okay, nope, we're good. Okay, it was close call, right? So what you do in those moments where you either actually like hurt your toe or finger, or you almost did and you recognize it, stop and go, what was I thinking in that moment? What was the background noise? Because usually I'm kind of distracted when it happens. I'm doing or thinking something else, and a lot of times cooking dinner. And it's like, okay, well, I wasn't actually thinking about cooking dinner. What was I actually thinking about during it? And then I go and I look at my chart. That's why I have it on my phone, because it's like right there. And I'm always like, oh, it's not going to be on there. It was an accident. And then I'll go and I'll look at it and I'll see what that particular finger means. And every single time I'm like, darn it, it's right again. I was thinking that. That was going on in the back of my head, and I was feeling that negative energy from that thought pattern. And I hadn't even been aware until my body signaled me, hey, there's something going on here in your mind you might want to take a look at, right? So this happened to me the other day. And even after all these years of employing this, the other day I was out, I was actually removing a cactus from my yard, and I was using a shovel with a wooden handle. And my kids, it was towards the end of the day, most of them were done with homework, and they jumped in, they really wanted to help. And so I was like, okay, you guys can help, but let's watch out for thorns, it's a cactus. But one of my children, who was the most enthusiastic to help, had not finished homework. And this child, it's like an ongoing issue with homework with this child, and it's so hard. And I feel like I'm always nagging this child, and we're trying to create new realities right now. It's just something we're actively working on, but it's very important for him to stay on task because they have such a heavy load to do all the time. So they're out there and I let them participate for a minute, and I'm like, okay, like back to homework, right? And so they keep coming out and keep coming out, and it's like 6 o'clock at night to where I'm like, okay, we don't have a lot of time to finish this in the day. And so I'm really starting to get after this child, and I'm using this shovel, and I shovel and suddenly just like splinter right up my finger, my middle finger. And I was like, oh, that was a bad one. That was a really big one. And it's like, whatever, I'm going to finish and then I'll go, dig out the splinter, whatever. So I did, and I dug out the splinter, and I was like, I'm not going to go and look at what it is, because it was just like, my hand slipped. That's all. Like, that's not like bumping into something. My hand just happened to slip. It's a slippery wooden shovel, right? Now, 2 days go on, and that's, even though the sliver is out, excuse me, even though the sliver is out, it's still hurting. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I already took care of that. So I decided to go and look up what that finger meant. And there was 3 meanings, 3 possibilities, and one of them was guilt. And I was like, guilt? What was I even doing when I got I was hounding my child to go and finish their homework, and I was actually scolding them like, hey, like, get this done. And I felt a lot of conflict and guilt inside. 1, that I'm having to hound them. 2, that I don't know how to help them to get this situation resolved. Like, all of the emotions that have been going on for me around this child was culminating in guilt, and I had not been aware of it. And as soon as I stopped and acknowledged that, an extra tiny little piece of the sliver that was like one of those invisible little pieces was coming out, and I pulled it out, and like my finger has not hurt since. But even though most of that sliver was gone, it was still signaling me, because I hadn't stopped to acknowledge that it originated to let me stop and realize I was feeling guilt. I was feeling in conflict from what I was saying and what I wished I were saying to that child. And that was a message for me. So if you can practice anytime you get any kind of little bump or injury, Google's really helpful. You can Google like metaphysical meaning of this body part. The other thing that I use all the time for this is another book. I actually have never read this book. It's called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die, and it is by Carolyn K. Truman. What I use this for is the glossary in the back. In the back of the book, she has this glossary of all these body parts and illnesses and their metaphysical meanings. And I always am like, yeah, that's not going to work. Like, she's got to be off at some point. At some point, she had to get this wrong. She can't be right 100% of the time. But when I actually pinpoint, whatever the illness is or the actual body part, like the source of its origination versus like maybe something that's like a cascading effect from the actual problem source, it's always dead right. And she usually has 3 or 4 things listed, sometimes 5 or 6. And it's always one of those. And usually when I hit upon it and I'm reading it, I just start bawling. Or when I've used it to help friends and loved ones or clients, I'll let them read it because it hurts a little less finding it out for yourself versus hearing it from somebody else. So I'll hand it to them and be like, here it is, read it. Do any of those feel like they apply to you? And there's always one that they either start crying or they get really quiet and they're like maybe that one, maybe those two. And like it's always there. And the point of doing that isn't to induce guilt or shame. It's to allow people to process the emotion that's there, the body signal that's happening from the thoughts, and then to be able to find healing and balance for those thoughts that are out of alignment with your true and highest self. So that's number 2, body signals. Tip number 3 is to practice being present and conscious to your present moment. Okay, now this can be a little counterintuitive when you first hear it, like, oh, aren't I supposed to be picturing the future and reality that I want? Yes, but you also have to acknowledge what you are already manifesting and what is so that you have the power to shift it. Because when we're in denial or blindness to what we are doing, we have no power to be able to shift or adjust it in any kind of a conscious, powerful way. So first you have to observe the results you're already getting from the thoughts that you're already having. That way you know where there is misalignments, disconnects, and you're able to shift it. Now, a few years back, I had a friend come to me and they were like, hey, Emily, I heard this thing today that I was listening to, and they talked about an exercise to become more present to your life and what's going on. And they said that for 10 days, every day, go and write 10 things. And it was, if I were 5% more conscious to my life, I would like see, know, understand, feel, like whatever. I would ... fill in the blank, and you write 10 things a day for 10 days. And at the end of this, you're going to be more conscious and present to your life and to your reality that you have. At this time, I was really struggling with like lots of negative feelings, and just life just felt very stuck and icky, and I just wasn't very happy. And they said this to me, and I was like, I already knew that I was having a hard time like really like clicking into what my life was and what was going on in my life, that I was always wanting to just kind of like disconnect and feel a little detached from it. Okay. And so I was like, I'm not doing that. That sounds like a terrible idea. This is usually apparently my initial reaction to things, is kind of like, heck no, that's not for me. But then I end up doing it anyway. So I was stewing on this, and within an hour, even though I hadn't asked for it, unbidden, my mind started giving me the answer to that question. If I were 5% more present to my life, then I would. And I was like, fine, I've got to go write this down, but I'm not doing it for 10 days. So I go to sit down and I start writing, thinking I'm going to have like 2 or 3 things. An hour goes by and I wrote about 100 things. I didn't stop writing for 2.5 pages, and we're talking lined paper. 2.5 pages later, my pen stopped. And I looked at my paper and I was like, well, I don't need to do the 10-day thing because I just got it all out in one go. And I was sobbing. And I saw my life so perfectly clear for what it was laid out. All of the weird mixed signals of life that I was getting, all of the flip-flopping where it's like, sometimes things work out, sometimes things don't. Sometimes I'm happy here, sometimes I'm not. I don't understand what's going on. And when I wrote out the answer to that question, I suddenly saw that inside of myself, I was a flip-flopping freaking mess. Sometimes I wanted a certain outcome. Other times I didn't want that outcome. And I was going back and forth all the time, and with great amounts of emotion with every swing each direction. And that I was like profoundly in denial of some of the things I was deeply unhappy about. Because if I saw it, that meant I couldn't live with just knowing it was there. I would have to do something about it. So it was easier to ignore it and deny that it was there and live in this weird disconnected state from my reality, because facing it meant a heck of a lot of pain and work to work through those issues and to acknowledge what was there and my part in what was there that I didn't like. And so doing this exercise of becoming very, very present, even just 5% more present to the reality that I had and what I was generating, profoundly shifted everything. And I've done therapy as a participant off and on for about 12 to 14 years now. I lose track, but I'll go for a few years, and then it's like I implement that, all these new things that I have, and then I come to my next shift and it's like, okay, time to start again. Like, let's work through that. And so this was one of those moments where it was like, okay, it's time to see a healer again. It's time to go and start working through these issues because now I can see them and now I know they're there. And you guys, when you are able to go and you have specific things to work on, the work is so powerful and it helps so much to instantly start changing and shifting things and give you your say back in life. So to recap, my 3 tips for raising your self-awareness is 1, observation, particularly of your background noise, your background programs that are running. Number 2, pay attention to body signals. And number 3, practice becoming present to what is currently so in your life. So that's it for today. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, shoot on down there and give it a like or subscribe to my channel or both, because every week I'm going to be putting out more great content like this to help people like you have light, love, and joy in your journey. Take care.